Hello friends, it's Chrissy. Welcome to or back to my channel. This is 100% not what I had planned on filming for Vlogust today. So as I was getting space ready to record a different video, I was watching, I just had, Tarot Tube going on my computer, and I was watching someone's only 10 decks. And I don't remember who, and that's not important because there was nothing about, I think it may have just been like, and this is a VR to Katie Flowers, only 10 decks. And I thought, ooh, I wonder how my only 10 decks have changed since the last time I did this video, because I feel like I'm a much different reader. I have a much different relationship with tarot than I did. Was it in the winter, I think, when the last time I would have done the only 10 decks tag. And I want to say, just to address, I know there's this undercurrent, sometimes like raging rapids, but there's this discussion going on now, of course, about, deck consumption and consumerism. And I want to say that the decks that I maybe have outgrown or shifted out of, I owe nothing but gratitude to decks that I previously mentioned that meant something, that would have been in this list before that aren't now. And just because they aren't now doesn't mean they won't come back into to my absolute favor. And to be completely honest, I could have cut it down to 5 with minimal issue. So, yeah, I recognize that the decks that I used to have relationships with that I don't anymore, that those decks taught me things, that they taught me what images I do resonate with, what images I don't resonate with. Cards that were confusing or didn't make sense, I had to do the research. I had to do, whether that was with the guidebook or with the internet or with YouTube or with my own intuition, I had to do work with decks that are no longer here. And I just want to honor like some of the decks that I'm pretty sure would have been on that list before that are not today, specifically the Lightseers Tarot. That's the one that comes to mind that I'm like, we're no longer buddies. But I'm still really grateful for what it taught me. And there are other decks in here that I didn't choose. I'm looking just right over there actually at the Gentle Tarot and the Future Ancestors Tarot. Neither one of them are in this video, but they still have very, very specific uses for me. And just because I'm not using them now doesn't mean I don't love them. Sort of like my husband and I, we recycle through shows that we watch. And just because we've moved to Malcolm in the Middle right now doesn't mean that we don't love Seinfeld. so just because a deck isn't here, doesn't mean that I devalue it or that it doesn't mean that I'm not thankful for what I learned from it, but I'm rambling. So let's go. I've got 10 and they're all tarot. At this point in my practice, I am not really using Oracle. I have a couple of Oracle decks that I would save if my house were burning, because they're not, because they're out of print and they would be really difficult to replace, but I would not put them in my, my heart level only 10 decks. So let's just get started. The first deck that I, of course, would bring with me. I carry one of these in my purse. There's one of these here in my office. My husband's copy is in my living room. There is a copy in our fireproof box, along with our birth certificates and our passports and our marriage certificate, because this is my deck. My intention is to do another run, hopefully soon. But I'm working on this project to teach us how to examine our relationship with social media and to build community outside of that. But anyway, that's where my attention is right now instead of building the tuck box for this deck, which is what I need to do before I do a second printing. Anyway, I've been talking for 5 minutes and have yet to show you a card. So here we go. This is my deck. This is the Narrative Alchemy Tarot. It's really interesting. I was talking to my friend Amy the other day. I edged this, by the way, with just regular Crayola markers. I was talking to my friend Amy and how since I created this deck I think I printed it in June, so not even that long ago, there are already things that I would change. There are keywords, there are chakras, how my understanding and my relationship with the tarot has changed even since I did this in the late spring, early summer. There's something amazing about holding a deck that I created, and seeing other people work with my handwriting and my decisions and my designs is just something that will never get old. The color of the card is the chakra association, the keyword based on how I read the card, and then the tarot correspondence in the bottom corner. This deck means the world to me. This is my heart in a deck, and I love how it really leaves everything up to interpretation. There aren't symbols, there isn't imagery. It's just a word that you can take however it sits with you that day. One of my favorites, I haven't been paying attention at all. I love revolution on the wheel, because there's that sense of not only the revolution in time and what goes around comes around, but also how can we take control of the wheel and the way the future is moving by creating revolution. And I don't know that I ever would have thought about it in those terms if I hadn't had seen simply just a keyword on a card. I could talk about my deck all day, and that's not what I'm doing. So the first deck that of my only 10 decks is my own, the Narrative Alchemy Tarot, and it lives here in a little sound bowl that was a gift from my friend Miranda, who passed away about a year ago. And inside of the bowl are some charms that Thea from Garden Goddess Tarot sent me. So this is a nice little cornerstone of my desk area. The second deck that I can't explain why I love it so much is the Tarot of the Drowning World. I talk about this deck all the time. And I want to be clear, I don't get it. I'm still working through the imagery and the symbolism. I use the guidebook every single day because, one, the guidebook is phenomenal, and two, even though it's, Pips and in the Marseille style, if I'm not mistaken, it looks new every time I pick it up. So for example, here we have the 7 of Pentacles, and I've never noticed the face in here before. I've noticed the faces in the court cards, but I've never noticed the face here in this 7. Yeah. I get lost in these cards. It's like, I lost in a great way. It's like, where's Waldo without purpose? I don't know how else to explain it. And I'm not being consistent here, because I get lost in this deck. I'm attempting to put it away, not put it away, but to maybe not draw with it every single day in September, but I don't know if this is going to happen. I show this deck all the time. So this is the Tarot of the Drowning World, and this would go with me if I was leaving the house overnight, period. It's my deck. Oh, I just thought of another deck. I thought of a number 11. Hold on, let me go get it. So now this means that to follow the rules, I have to not talk about one that I have sitting over here. Oh, golly. We'll see how that works. All right. So the next deck. So we talked about my absolute daily draws. Again, I would take with me, if I were going somewhere overnight, I would also take this deck with me. This is what I read at bedtime. This is the Tarot to Lose, and I love this deck. It feels like the art reminds me of if I understood Lilifer. I don't know how else to explain it. Lilifer feels very outside of my understanding, and it may just be because the colors are more pastel. I love this deck. I love this deck. This is the deck that the Queen of Pentacles showed up in, that inspired, that spoke to me, that inspired my Queen of Pentacles work for this month. This is what I wanted Lilifer to be. And that is, I'm completely keeping Lilifer. It's something I intend to work with and build on. But I'm not there yet with the symbolism. That is completely okay. Look at this Emperor where the goat has the little crown. I love this deck. And it's funny, this is the deck that I read with before bed. I pick a card. I love how grumpy the Queen of Swords looks. How Christina Yang is that? I draw a card before bed every night. I go back and forth with this and the Devas of Creation. Actually, I choose from this one unless I know I'm going to have trouble sleeping and I want to have a deeper meditation, in which case I'll do the Devas of Creation. But this one, I feel like I use it I draw at night, but then I also reflect on how the energy showed up for me in the day before I shuffle. So I do consult the previous day's card. I love this deck. It's tiny. And it makes me happy. And the fabric is a fabric that I used. A friend of mine, I'm making some wraps for her, and this was some leftover fabric. So I made myself a little wrap, a little envelope. So yes, so Tarot to Lose would be number 3. Number 4 would be an absolute nostalgia deck. Number 4 of decks that I could not do without. This is the Fountain Tarot. I probably have not read with this deck. Now I'm like, and I really need to, in a long time. But this was a deck that inspired me to read. I know I had a Rider-Waite-Smith, and I know I had the Wild Unknown before this deck, and just was really struggling on how to make any connections. And there was something about this one that I was just like, oh yeah, I feel this. This was the first deck I had an emotional connection with. The energy of this deck, and I've talked about this a little bit before, but I think of this every time I see this deck. the way that was safest for me to learn how to read was to not give it an emotional framework, but keep it all in solar plexus, right? Keep it all about career and momentum moving forward and about who I was in the world, not how I am internally. So the energy of this deck then for me is very masculine, is very, outward focused, how I present to the world, how I want to bring my strengths into the world, not processing things within me. And I don't know that that is a quality of the deck itself per se, or simply what I was comfortable managing when I was learning to read. so then that is the flavor that this deck takes on. And I'm curious if it could have a different personality for me. I'm curious if I could, this takes my breath away. This Six of Swords is my favorite card in any deck. It makes me feel things. Like I saw it and all at once, like I got a big smile on my face and my stomach dropped. I can't go any further. We've got to end on the Six of Swords. So I really am curious if this deck could take on a wider persona now that I have a wider experience of tarot. I just don't know. And this is probably my favorite wrap match. I just think, yay, Joanne Fabrics. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 4 of my only 10 decks. The 5th deck that I'll talk about, I have no idea which one I'm not going to mention so far. Let's talk about another one that would come with me for sentimental reasons. This is another tight wrap. This is the Linescape Tarot. There was a time when I would have said this was my soul deck. And I'm still not sure that is untrue. I hate the backs. I absolutely hate the backs of these cards. These cards really feel like the way that Reiki energy shows up for me. It's very much in scenery and then like a very specific energy inside of a big, vast scene. So almost like putting something like, almost like taking a scene from The Majestic Earth and dropping a character from Curious Creatures in there. So having like the vastness and the very specific energy, that's how Reiki comes across to me in my narrative alchemy sessions that I do with clients and myself. And this is how these cards feel. There's all of this scenery, but this is where my specific focus goes inside of it. The match, these are the Seasons cards. The match of that and how I experience Reiki just tickles my brain in a way that no other deck does. I have issue with pregnant figures, but that's neither here nor there. And some of these aren't how I read the cards, so they give me a real moment to pause and actually think about it and to challenge how I understand it. So instead of, I typically see the Four of Cups as setting a clear boundary and saying, whatever the fourth cup is that is coming to me, I don't have time for it. I trust that if the timing is right, in the future, it will come back. I see it's like a real energetic boundary card, where this one does have the sense of dejection or maybe a little bit of depression or shame around that. So I don't see this as wrong at all. I see this as challenging the understanding that I have that's in the little box of the Four of Cups, and how it can mean something different to me on a different day. This card. It's clean now. This, oh my gosh, I love this Six of Pentacles so much. We have the vast open space with the statue looking over, like the big picture guidance. And then the small person to person sharing of light. I love it. This is the only deck that I have, I have 2 editions of. A friend of mine sent me the second edition. I think it's the second generation is how it's phrased. It's over there in my little tarot cubby. I love, oh my gosh, I love this death card and how there's the energy of releasing, of choosing to give up, choosing the transformation, choosing the metamorphosis, and opening the hands to receive what is coming next. I love it. I love it. So now this card this deck wants a place on my desk too, even though it's just in the cubby right beside it. I love this deck. I'm getting so nostalgic for when I didn't really know what I was doing. and wanting to experience these decks again differently with my different with my increased knowledge and trust in my intuition, even from what I had 6 months ago. Teaching tarot school will really solidify what you believe about tarot. I mean, surprise, surprise. I still don't know which one I'm leaving out. So let's go with, let's go here. I just showed this deck recently, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. This is the Journey to the Tower Tarot. This is phenomenal. I have a real soft spot for both photography decks and decks that were intentionally created during the pandemic. I think there are a lot of ways that we don't acknowledge the collective trauma, big T and little t trauma that we've been through. And there's something about seeing images that will always have been created during that time that just makes me feel things. And this deck is one of those. And I love that there's nothing precious about these props. You can tell, like, this horse is cardboard. I love the face on the angel here and the lovers. It's kind of like the devil's coming up, friends. Are you ready? The horse here has no hindquarters. You can see the drill in this card. I love this deck. I just did the tarot aesthetic tag last week that shows you my current love for photography decks. So I won't show much more of this one. I probably didn't even need to show as much as I did, but I did. So this is the Journey to the Tower Tarot. And I don't think I'm having a hard time getting, there's a bend in this deck that I think the elastic is causing. So we're just gonna we're just gonna tuck that right in there. 4 more spots. I'm looking at 5 decks. All right, this is my latest acquisition. This is the Ogenblick Tarot. Super cozy wrap because Chrissy can't measure. This was my white whale. Again, kind of similar to the linescapes. There's something to me about having the vast sense of scenery and able to put the energy of the card into the picture, being able to place myself in the picture. So I don't think I've said this out loud yet, but since I've gotten this deck, I don't really know if I feel the need to keep Majestic Earth. I was struggling with Majestic Earth because it feels almost too vast and too open. I was going to use it again in the fall, maybe, but this feels like everything that felt too big in Majestic Earth, that this has given me the structure for. I feel like I need the architecture within the landscapes to give me, in like a 4 of Swords way, to like give me a sense of structure and a sense of protection. Yeah, a sense of structure to bring my energy into, where and this could completely be a timing thing, but the Majestic Earth just feels too vast, and this feels just right. This feels just right for a scenic deck. I love it. I love it. I've used it for a couple of readings. I'm going to do a that 9 card spread with this coming up. I don't know if I'll record it or not. I love this for the 8 of Swords. This deck is so well done and so thoughtful, and is sincerely everything I hoped it would be. There is a video earlier this month of me being super giddy as I opened the package. I purchased this deck from Thea at Garden Goddess Tarot, and yeah, if you want to see a walkthrough with a deck and Chrissy basically just squeal, that video is it's a few videos back. So next we have the deck that I am currently working with. This is the Tarot Volatile. I'll be working with this deck daily through the middle of October. This is my study deck for Inner Wands Tarot School that I'm teaching. And as one of my students, Tiffany, as she said, this deck has my number. This deck is reading my journal. Every single reading I do with this deck, this sucker reads me to absolute filth. It has no filter. It has no like the little bumper guards when you go bowling. There's none of that. Its edges are sharp. It tells me like it is, and I love it. Because it is not the kind of energy that I bring to other people, and a lot of these other decks are. This energy is completely foreign to me as a receiver or as a provider. And what I find is really interesting about this deck is there are a lot of cards in tarot that I tend to take a different view on. Like, to me, I see Lovers as like how we can see ourselves differently through the mirror of someone else's eyes, how we can remove our own blinders by listening to others, the good and the bad, the beneficial and the challenging, to get a more accurate view of who we are. That's how I tend to read the Lovers. And that's even a slight shift from the way I was taught. But in this Lovers, it is so, this is about a choice, point blank. Oh my gosh, here we are again at a stunningly beautiful Six of Swords. This deck, the three of cups to me reads not like a celebration, but instead you're partying too hard. This Three of Wands is just, I love this deck. I am so thrilled that I chose to use this deck for study in Inner Wands Tarot School. I love it. It feels like just generations down the line from the pagan otherworlds as well, which I think is another reason why I love it. It feels like a continuation of that energy for me. I love it. I love it. I love it. This card haunts me. It chases me around and it finds me, and I love it. So this is Tarot Volatile. This is my buddy, and this is just the 78 card version of the deck. I do have the full expansion pack, and I do have the suit of vessels, which I intend to bring in when I've gone through each of these 78 cards. I love this deck, love it. So I guess because to complete the generational cycle, I am going to go ahead and talk about Pagan Otherworlds for my number 9 of my top 10 decks. This is one of my absolute favorite fabric matches. This is one of the first wraps that I made, and it is janky as all hell, and I love it. I didn't let the glue dry enough before I've shaped it, so it's all crunchy, and I don't even use glue anymore. This is the Pagan Otherworlds, and I love it. I love it for so many reasons. Confession, I bought this deck around this time last year, maybe, like between my birthday's in November. So like November, December, January of last year, I was like, I'm gonna be a collector. And I bought several decks that I'm like, these are decks that I just want to have, that I'm not gonna use. This was one of them. The Insomnia Tarot was one of them. I think that's when I bought Carnival at the End of the World as well, which I now use all 3 of those regularly. I guess I could show you cards while I'm talking, right? This was a deck that I studied with when I did the first round of Inner Wands Tarot School. And it really helped with some understanding of a few cards like that. I feel like this one really helped me solidify that, like, the Four of Cups is about deciding if you want to bring the 4th cup in or if you keep the 4th cup at a distance. I love the pips with feeling here that we see the 10 of Cups, but there's also the celebratory maypole. We have the house with plenty of water and plenty of trees and flowers. So there's still that representation of flourishing. I love strength and how the choice of using a bear because it's what would have been geographically appropriate. People complain about the 8 of Wands just being sticks, and I love it very much. I want to see if one of my favorite things about this deck is that that many of the characters are redheaded, as is my husband. But this card, the Justice card, physically looks like my friend Allison. And I love this deck so much because she has hair like Allison and she's wearing maroon, which is a very special color for my husband's dance school. And part of why I would hold this deck close, that I would take it with me, is because Justice looks like my friend Allison, and because so many of the figures are gingers, as is my husband. And this devil just cracks me up. I love this deck. I mean, that's my husband. Especially during the pandemic when he let his hair grow out. That's Nathan. So yeah, I love the pagan otherworlds. I loosely actually designed the back of my deck in a repetitive pattern as sort of an homage to the pagan otherworld. So I have 2 decks left. And you know what? I've done this tag before. I don't remember if I stuck to it 10 or not before. But I can't do it. I can't choose. So we're going to bring them both out at the same time so that I'm only doing 10 shots, even though we're talking about 11 decks. So my 10 and my runner-up, I'm not going to choose. I'm not going to put them in order because I don't know that I can. I see the 6 of Swords in there. Come on, buddy. Is the Tarot is color. These could not be any more different, right? The Tarot is color and the Insomnia Tarot. So we'll talk Tarot is color first. Both of these are number 10. I'm going to assume that it's fine. This deck has a similar feel to me as Tarot with the Drowning World, which was the second deck I talked about, in so much that I don't get it. Logically, I don't get it. Intuitively, it is magic. And, you know, I was talking to someone the other day about how I feel like we have to, not everyone, but for me, I really had to build a complete structure for the tarot system in my own little brain in their traditional way. I had to know what the Ace of Cups was about, just off the top of my head. I had to know what the Nine of Wands was about. I had to know what the Seven of Cups was about off the top of my head before I gave my intuition permission to show up. Because if I would have seen this card and thought, oh, so this is like our thoughts coming up and how, you know, sometimes between us and when we let them go, they can move through some filters, and how can we keep hope in our thoughts as they move out. If that's the intuitive hit that I got, but I had to look up the meaning of the star, I would have doubted my intuition. I hope that makes sense. I would have brought my intuition as a question to the meaning of the card before I knew the meaning of the card. I had to know what the cards meant before my intuition could come in. And this deck to me represents being comfortable enough with the structure of tarot for my intuition to be the loudest voice. A year ago, this deck, I couldn't have touched it. This deck would have made me mad. I would have thought this deck was ridiculous and dumb. And now I'm like, I love you so much. I love you so much, Queen of Cups, with your little circle here in the middle to represent like the part of you that we hold safe and pure for ourselves, even though we have everyone else's emotions around us, and we can hold them. We can hold the emotions of others in that container. There's still this little place in the middle that we need to hold fully for ourselves. And I don't know that my intuition could have said that if I didn't know the meaning of the Queen of Cups. So, I love this deck. I love this deck. I couldn't be without it. So, tarot is color. It doesn't want to go back. Play with me, Chrissy. Play with me, it says. And then finally, for 10.2, we have the Insomnia. I just talked about this in a video just the other day about my aesthetic being photography right now and how much I love photography decks. And I heard someone recently say that she couldn't read photography decks because she picked up on the energy of the person in the photograph. And that doesn't bother me in this deck. One, because I know that most of these figures are either the creator or a mannequin of some sort. I know some were like his sister or his girlfriend or whoever, but where a lot of these are the creator himself, I think that allows me to put a sense of neutrality. And also the fact that we don't see any faces. I feel like this is actually, even though it's photography, I feel like not seeing the face is actually more energetically neutral for me than something like the light seers or I don't know if I put curious creatures in that. I feel like curious creatures I can see myself. But even things like the mystical moments, is that really all I have that has faces? It's either photography or abstract. This is interesting. Anyway, yeah, drawn faces, I have a harder time staying energetically neutral and not being empathetic with that expression than I do these. These I'm like total blank slate for me. So, friends, these are my 11 top 10 decks. So I'm telling myself that the first time I did top 10, that maybe I stuck to 10. And the second time I went to 11. And maybe the third time I'll go to 12. But as a recap, we'll start, go kind of this. I didn't close this right. Hold on. That's not right. Going kind of reverse. We have Insomnia Tarot. We have Tarot with Color. Pagan Otherworlds. Tarot Volatile. Ogenblick. Did I even tell you what this was called the first time? It's the Ogenblick. Journey to the Tower. Tarot to Lose. Linescapes. Fountain. Drowning World, and Narrative Alchemy. Friends, I hope you enjoyed this. I'm curious if you have done the top 10 deck tag. Have your choices changed since the tag went around the original time? I would love to see that. It's a good thing I'm done because I am losing my light. I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you here tomorrow.